The recent ban on mining at some iron ore mines in Odisha and China's crackdown on pollution have come as good news for companies such as Prakash Industries, Sarda Energy, Godavari Power and Ispat, some of the few players who are not impacted by the ban. Yatin Mota is standing by with details on what has prompted this and whether there are any other factors at play here. Yatin?
Thanks for that, Menaka. And if you look at Prakash Industries and Godavari Power in particular, of course, Sarda Energy also moved up. But these are the few stocks which have given, returns to investors of nearly 2-3 times in the last few months or so. In fact, in the last 4 months, what we have seen is significant changes in, the overall metric for iron ore. Now we have the Supreme Court ruling on Odisha mining, which has impacted nearly 20 million tons of iron ore as well as steel capacity, which in turn has created some shortages and, higher prices for pellets, sponge iron, pig iron and, iron ore itself. Apart from that, if you look at the factors, Odisha and Chhattisgarh together account for nearly 60% of iron ore production, of which, more than 2/3 comes in from the state of Odisha, clearly, and that is getting impacted on an overall basis. Also, if you look at the domestic steel and ferroalloy prices, they have jumped by nearly 20% in the last 4 months, according to Edelweiss research. And if you look at the overall China context, clearly rising demand in China is one of the factors, and more importantly, because of the environmental concerns, we have seen the overall crackdown on illegal capacities and capacities which have been quite inefficient. So on the environmental front, we have seen a very big Chinese, crackdown, because of which we have seen severe shortage of pellets in China, which was, probably a very small importer, but has now turned into a very large importer. Now, if you look at the pellet prices, they were close to 5,000 rupees on an average for FY17, and currently it should be more than, 6,500 rupees a ton as per our dealer checks. So clearly, almost 30% up in the last 1 quarter is what we have seen in terms of the pellet prices versus the average of 5,000 rupees. Now, Prakash Industries, they came out with the Q3 numbers, a few weeks back. The revenue growth was 50%, and look at the profit growth, almost 460%. And this is to do largely with the fact that a lot of their realizations have improved, operations and turnaround capacity utilization has improved. If you look at the guidance also of the company, they expect the capacity utilization to be 100% versus 80% currently. Margins also expected to improve by nearly 500 basis points to a level of 25%. And fourth quarter volume growth, and look at that number, 35% is the kind of volume growth. Forget about the pricing growth. The volume growth itself of the company should be 35% according to their press release. Also, if you look at the sponge iron capacity, they are expanding it by 20%. And if you compare Prakash Industries as well as Godavari Power and Ispat, the sponge iron capacity is close to 1 million tons per annum, and finished steel is also on the similar lines. And if you look at Godavari Power also, and if you assume the pellet prices have to move up, they have a pellet capacity of 2.1 million ton, which is running at almost 90-95% capacity utilization, and sponge iron billets put together is close to 1 million ton, and they have a rope facility in which the production is expected to pick up, which is again close to 3 lakh tons per annum. So if you look at the Chinese context, if you look at the domestic demand context, all of these companies are in a sweet spot. In fact, we had the chairman of JSW Steel, Sajjan Jindal, also tweet quite candidly regarding the shortage and the Odisha issue, because of which the cost of production of steel has been going up significantly. And sponge iron, pellet, all of these goods are used to manufacture steel. And in that case, if raw material prices are moving up, clearly companies like Godavari Power and Prakash Industries as well as Sarda Energy, which provide the raw material to the steel industry, are in a sweet spot and in a position to gain.
Yeah, in fact, he had some fairly sharp comments to make. He said people are losing jobs, government is losing royalty and revenue, and the steel industry is losing iron ore. It's helping nobody. This is Sajjan Jindal tagging the steel ministry, Arun Jaitley, the Prime Minister. And then he says, the government must approach the Supreme Court, considering that the iron ore shortage of additional 20 million tons per annum in the country will lead to a disastrous situation wherein the small companies will be forced to shut operations. He's also given a recommendation saying, how about allowing for PSUs to run these mines while the Supreme Court makes a decision on this. As Yatin pointed out, the industry seems to be fairly concerned about the outcomes of all of this and the impact on the shortage of iron ore.
So somebody's gained, somebody's lost.
Yeah, absolutely.
Smaller suppliers are definitely gaining.
I just want to add, in the Indian context, China always was strong in terms of the high-grade iron ore, which probably India exports. But one more factor was the minimum import price, which is MIP, which was imposed on steel imports in India. What that has done is that the domestic steel producers are now able to procure raw material even at a slightly higher price. So all these players that we are talking about are the raw material providers, and the steel company didn't mind paying higher because they were realizing higher. So not only China was a key factor, but the domestic industry structure was such that steel producers, because of demand, because of various reasons, were able to pay more. And now, over and above that, we have a Odisha mining issue because of which the realizations for such companies will move up further quarter after quarter, if the situation continues, of course.